Welcome to the Qualifying Studies webinar. So as you can see, we've got a presentation here we're going to go through and get started here. And what we're going to do first, just before we get started, is make a territorial acknowledgement, as UFV is situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Stolo peoples. And we express our gratitude and respect for the honor of living and working in this territory. UFV recognizes and honors the contribution that Aboriginal people have made and continue to make in our community. We support Indigenous learners and seek to incorporate Indigenous ways of knowing in the curriculum. So we'll move to the next slide now and welcome you all here to this webinar. This is a brief overview on the next slide here of what we're covering in this presentation. So on the next slide, we'll talk about how it works. So we have a few of advisors here, myself as the moderator, and then Gina as well as the comment moderator. And so we're going to be able to answer your questions throughout the presentation. So there is a chat comment, a chat button on the top right of the screen where if you have any questions, feel free, again, throughout the presentation to ask any questions, type them in. And there will be lots of time for questions at the end as well if you have questions about items that we maybe didn't cover that you're wondering about. So let's go on to qualifying studies and what it is. So shorthand, we call it QS, and so it's often described as the first step in your educational journey. And so there's within QS, you're allowed to take classes at UFV, any class that you would like, as long as you meet the prerequisites, and it's intended to be working towards your program of interest. So as part of that, in most cases, the courses you take in QS can be then used for your intended program down the line when you're in it. So you might be wondering which courses you'd want to take while being in qualifying studies. So you can take any course as long as you meet the prerequisite for it. So you would also be able to take upgrading courses. And so some just general suggestions for the fall semester would be upgrading courses if you need to do any upgrading to meet entry requirements for your program of interest. It's also a good idea to build a good writing foundation right from the beginning. And so that could be an English upgrading course or a first-year English or communications course. Typically, students would start with a 100 level course, so a first-year level course in your first semester. And you can also look at courses that are of interest. If you've got any areas that you want to explore, this is a great time to do that within your first semester. And you can also be looking at core courses from your intended program. And so we can show you as well what that looks like in terms of where to find those specific courses through the academic calendar. And maybe we'll do that a bit later on towards the end of the presentation. And then you can ask specific questions again as well about the courses that you would want to take based on your specific interests. So just in general, moving on again, we'll talk about just workload and the courses to be taking for your semester. So workload is something to consider just in terms of how many classes you're taking. Most courses, a lot of courses are 3 credits, but they can be worth 3 credits, 4 credits, or 5 credits. And so you want to be sure to look at how many credits the course is that you're looking at taking, because that's about the number of hours you'll be in class per week. Now, for this upcoming fall semester, it is primarily going to be online in terms of the teaching setup, but that's typically the instructional time. And then for every hour you spend in class, plan for about 1 to 2 hours of homework, assignments, reading, research projects. So that can be about 3 hours in class and 6 hours homework for a 3-credit course. So for a 3-credit course, you'd want to budget about 10 hours per week for that course. So that gives you a bit of an idea if you're thinking of doing three credit courses, you'd be looking at about 30 hours per week. So if you're working or volunteering, just looking at balancing your time to structure it so that you're not too spread thin. Because you want to enjoy your first semester and your time at UFV as well. So thinking about what's going to be manageable in terms of that workload. So just a little bit about the high school versus the university. It is a big transition from high school to university, and so there is a few things just to be aware of. There's very little time in class to work on assignments, so that's one of the differences in terms of shifting from the high school classroom to the university classroom. There's a lot more flexibility in choosing your own schedule. It's much more independent in terms of if you need help reaching out for support, you're more responsible for your education in that teachers won't follow up with you. It would be your responsibility to reach out if you have a question, if you're not sure of the material. There's lots and lots of supports at UFV, but it is up to you to reach out for that support, and we're happy in advising to help connect you with the appropriate supports, and we'll talk a little bit in a bit as well about what some of those supports are. And one thing as well is there's a lot of room to explore, a lot of different subject areas at university that weren't available in. So just moving on to the next slide, looking at my grad plan, this is just very briefly touching on this tool, which is something that's available through your My UFV that every student is able to access. And what it does is it gives you a full overview of what you need to complete a program in terms of the specific courses. And it gives a bit of a checklist format in terms of what you need to do, and can be helpful to decide what classes to choose. And so that's really a great tool. And it can be a little, there's a lot of little pieces to it. So we recommend meeting with an advisor to go through it at first to understand what it means and how to use it. So just speaking about some of those supports and coming back to that, the next slide shows all of the different supports that UFV has to offer. And so there is a range of different supports. So academic, we've got peer tutoring through the Academic Success Center, where there is one-on-one tutoring, math and stats center, so a center that supports courses in math and stats. There's study skills counseling, there's Lots of different ways academically to be supported, and of course your instructors are there to support you as well through their instructor office hours and such. Financial, there is a financial aid and awards office. So if you haven't been on their website, that's something we'd recommend just to see different options there. Through emotional, mental support, we have counseling, there's therapy dogs, and a range of different supports there as well. Socially, clubs, events, different associations to be able to get involved and meet people as well. So just coming back to academic advising, we're here to help. So we want to help connect you to and support and help you think about courses and programs. And so we typically recommend that while you're in qualifying studies that you would check in once a semester with an advisor, make sure you're on track. We can help you with your course planning and just looking at taking those next steps. And so the link there at the bottom is where you'd be able to book your appointment. So just lastly, briefly, we wanted to talk about registration because that will be coming up for the fall semester. Through your My UFV account, there is a registration date and time that is assigned to each student. Hopefully that's going to be available by mid-June. Hopefully by the end of next week, you would be able to check that. There is a $200 deposit that's required before you're able to register, and it is recommended that you pay that at least 72 hours in advance of your registration date so that it has time to be applied to your account. There is a higher fee for international students based on their on tuition as well. So then the next step would be reviewing the timetable to select classes and then register online through your My UFV account. There is registration help available through the Future Students Office as well, where you can book registration, a registration session, and just to talk about going through that process. So that was just a brief overview of starting in QS. And so we're happy here to answer any specific questions as well related to your program.